make sure you subscribe, click that little bell icon to be notified of upcoming videos, support us on Patreon, like us on Facebook and Instagram at Model Railroad Techniques. Please have a look at my new website, www.modelrailroadtechniques.com. Hi guys, and welcome back. Darren from MRT here. Have you ever wondered how to put a really nice corrugated iron roof together and then add some really nice rusting effects to it? In this video, I'll show you just that, so let's get over to the bench. In last week's Tool of the Week video, I made some really neat little corrugated iron sheets, so that's what we're going to use to put this roof together. So the first thing we need to do is cut some roof purlins. So this is the neat little tool that I use. This is the Micro Mark. So what I'm doing there is I'm ripping off some roof purlins for the roof. So that's a 1.5 millimeter thickness balsa sheet there, and the purlin I'll be ripping off is approximately 1 to 1.5 millimeters wide as well. So the kit that this roof is going to end up going on is a Railroad Craftsman's kit. So that little piece of cardboard there for the roof is about 4.5 centimeters by 5.5 centimeters. So what I'm doing there, just sizing up the purlins. So each side of the roof, or each half of the roof I should say, will have 3 purlins on it. You may well be asking, why am I elevating the roof sheets a little bit? The reason why, I want to make it a little bit of a ramshackled roof, so it's going to give me the opportunity to have a little bit of a bend in the roof and make it a little more weathered and beaten up. So at that point I'm just cutting the rest of them, sizing up the purlins, all ready to be glued onto that cardboard sheet. It's up to you, it doesn't have to be exact lengths. You can see I'm just doing it as just sizing it up for the length. So what I'm doing there is just using a Scotch-Brite to sort of just take off the edges of the purlin. So what I was finding after I cut them with the Micro Mark cutter is they just became just a little bit rough on the edges. So I just smooth them back a little bit to take the edge off. So the next bit I need to do is glue all the purlins in. So what I use is the run-of-the-mill Elmer's school glue, which I'm finding in Australia we can actually get it, which is nice because it's a nice sort of even consistency, very light type PVA glue. So what I'm doing there, that's an upside down business card. I just put a nice dollop of the glue there. Get a toothpick and I'll start very shortly gluing all the purlins on the cardboard sheet. So what I'm doing here is using my daughter's pencil and just putting some nice horizontal lines across that, so I sort of can use it as some sort of guide to where these purlins need to go. So at this point in time I'm starting to add some glue. Sorry, it's just out of the picture there. So it's just a matter of running toothpick, a nice even lot of glue across there, and then just sticking it to the cardboard. So at this point it's I'll just speed the footage up here a little bit. You don't need to see me putting all those on, but it's just a matter of getting a nice even coverage of glue on it, getting them nice and perpendicular or horizontal to each other I should say, and just putting them and just working methodically through to get them all nice and squared away. Just make sure they are nice and dry before you go to the next step. So what I'm doing here, what I wanted to do actually on my roof was I wanted to have 2 sheets per line as such. So obviously you can get sheets, particularly in newer sheds, that are 1 sheet all the way through from the ridge to all the way through to the gutter, but I sort of wanted to have 2, so I'm just sizing it up and cutting them in half. So what I've done at that point, I've grabbed some of the Elmer's PVA glue. Sorry, it's just slightly outside, and I've put on the purlin. So I've put the first sheet on. Basically you can see what I'm doing there. I'm just trying to square it up, and so it's important you get the first sheet square to the edge. So that's just me squaring it up, and then it just makes it a lot easier for the subsequent sheets to go on. So it doesn't really matter too much regarding what the length of them are, because you can see me putting the glue on there, and then it's just a matter of you overlapping the sheets. So just be mindful you don't use too much glue at the overlap, because the glue has a tendency to bleed out and creates all sorts of issues trying to... It's probably important to point out, after you've done the first side of the roof, what I did there, you can see I just put a ruler down and then just put a little bit of weight on it, because then what you need to try to do is try to glue it and let the glue go off as much as you can. You can see obviously I've pulled that off a little bit quickly, and it's pulled off one of the sheets, but nevertheless we'll just glue that back on and it should be all good. So there you can see the first side is done, so I've just sped up the footage here a little bit, and you just got to work methodically. Probably after the first side is actually dried, I started the second side, because it's very easy to get them to start slipping around and moving once you if it's not dry correctly. So every now and again you just got to check the alignment. Sometimes the edges are not glued down properly, so it's just a matter of tipping it up on its edge and just carefully sliding the toothpick under there. So there's the finished product. It needs a little bit of trimming up. Some of those sheets are a little bit long and a little bit wide, but that'll get done at a later stage. Now down the middle there you can see I need to do the ridge cap. That'll be done a little bit later as well, but I'll start weathering it up to start with. But I'm quite happy the way that's come up. So now we add the first wash. So what I'm doing is using a Vallejo Dark Rust there. So this first lot of wash is a 50-50 mix, so it's water based, so it's obviously 50-50 with water. So as you can see, you do it in one direction. So what I mean by that is you want to do it the way that the rain would, or the water would run down the sheet. So you go from where the ridge cap is to the gutter length. So it's just a matter of going all the way through, nice thick sort of brush or whitish sort of brush, and just be very careful you don't sort of lift up any of the iron sheets as you go. So the next lot of wash I put on is actually a 60-40 mix, so with the water. So this is just a bit more of a thinner wash, so obviously 60 of water. So it's just a matter of putting in your palette there, give it a mix, and same as before, just let it run in a way that the rain would run down the sheet. Now just make sure between each step here this is absolutely dry, because all you're going to do is smudge all your colourings. So this next step I use this dark earth type colour. So what we actually do here, we use some sponges, put it into your palette, and then sponge it onto the... So at this point you can see I'm trying to get as much of that paint off as I can, because with this colour you can really go overboard and actually ruin it. So it's just a matter of less is more. Just build the colour up to it, dab it around. Just be careful you don't dab too hard, because you can actually damage the sheeting. Now I actually use a makeup sponge there, but you can actually use a sort of a run-of-the-mill kitchen type sponge to get different effects. That's all I had at this point in time was the makeup sponge, so that's what I'm using. So that's the end of the technique. So you continue to work in this same colour with a really small type brush. Now it's just a matter of working it randomly through the area and just working in different sections. So you can see I'm sort of working along the seam lines there. Now for the weathering chalk, so the first one I will use is a dirty brown type colour, and next is a rusty brown powders and rusty red weathering powder. Now the brushes I use to apply these are a number 2 and number 3 brush there. If I can get them in focus, there we go. So you can see the top one that's been cut down a little bit to make it a little bit stiffer. So the first effect I'll use is obviously the dirty brown. What I'll actually do here, I use the larger brush, dab it off, and then I'll start applying it in localized areas as I see fit. So this is obviously a little bit trial by error, but this color sort of represents the older rust. So normally this darker color I'll start along the seam lines and towards the top of the sheets, just as a matter of course. So the next colour I will look at doing is the next shade down. So I'm looking at the rusty brown colour, and same sort of thing. I just work it in with the larger brush, sort of different areas. You're just trying to build the texture and the colour grade. So as you can see, that's obviously a bit more of an orangey colour. So I'll work that along the edge of the sheet, which represents more the bit newer rust. So this Vallejo dark yellow ochre. Now I didn't initially have that up there, but I was just looking at it and I just thought it just needed something just a little bit extra, bit yellowy orangey colour. So obviously this colour you got to be really careful with, because it adds quite a bit of highlight to it. So you just need a little bit, and I'll just work it into the edges, which represents the few day old rust that's just starting to settle there. So So what I'm doing here, I'm just picking up the side, and just where those little shiny bits are still shining through, I just got a very soft lead pencil. Just be very careful, just to sort of dull that metal down a little bit. You got to be a little bit careful putting your fingers, like I just did then, on the weathered roof there as well, until it gets sealed off. Okay, so what I'm actually doing here, just getting a cotton bud with just a little bit of water on it. So just some of the areas I found that just a little bit overdone, so I've just sort of mixed it in a little bit to sort of try to grade out the rust effect a little bit better. So that's it, sort of pretty well in its finished state. You can see through the middle there, I still need to do the ridge cap, but as a whole I think that's come up quite nicely. It's sort of a real line between sort of new rust, old rust, and sort of a dirty old rusty shaded roof. So I'm pretty happy with the way that's come out. So the next section here, I decided, initially I wasn't going to do this in the video, is actually make the ridge cap, which is the cap that sits between the two sides of the sheet. So here's me just measuring up. Same aluminium foil I used before, and I'm sort of just sizing it up for how long it's going to be. So this next section is me trying to work out how wide the ridge cap needs to be. So I sort of decided to make it probably a little bit wider than it needs to be, because you can always trim it with very carefully with scissors afterwards, but not quite sure on the angle of the what the iron's going to be when it goes on the building proper. So you can see the strip there, so I'm just getting it nice and smooth. Now I'm going to use this other little tool that'll come up shortly. It's basically a metal bender for model railroads. It's a really cool piece of kit. It's made by a company called Mission Models, and it's called Etchmate 3C. So it's basically a precision photo etch bending tool, but I thought it'd be quite good to use for this. So basically it's like you clamp it down with that black knob in the middle, and then you get these little jig tools, I should say, which you'll see shortly, and bend it up. So there you go. Then you just slide that little orange tool underneath. It's like a knife edge on the front of it. Just very carefully bend it up, and it bends up to the angle that you want it at. So it's a really nice piece of kit. So here's some pictures of the finished product. You can see I've put the ridge cap on there. Now that technique I used for weathering that up, it's exactly the same as I did with the sheets. So that's the end of this week's video. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Make sure you subscribe, click that little bell icon to be notified of upcoming videos. Support us on Patreon, like us on Facebook and Instagram at Model Railroad Techniques. Please have a look at my new website, www.modelrailroadtechniques.com.